In every resume lies a story, not of experience, but of expectation. And sometimes, it's not what's written beneath your name that defines your fate, but the name itself. Malik Washington had spent his whole life believing that effort could outwork bias. He was the kind of man who believed in merit, in earning what others inherited. Top of his class in computer science, the first in his family to graduate college. He had the kind of determination that should have made him unstoppable, but the world had other ideas. One by one, rejection letters filled his inbox, polite, identical, and empty, each beginning with the same words, "Thank you for your application." Each ending with the same lie, "We've decided to move forward with other candidates." It took months before Malik realized the pattern wasn't in his qualifications, but in something far simpler. His name. Out of curiosity, or perhaps quiet anger, he made one small change. He rewrote his resume, keeping everything the same. Same experience, same degrees, same address. Only this time, Malik Washington became Michael W. Dawson. 48 hours later, the interviews poured in. It wasn't luck. It wasn't timing. It was proof. And for the first time in his life, Malik understood what it meant to be invisible. He entered the corporate world under a false name, not because he wanted to, but because he had no other way in. Michael Dawson became the professional version of himself. Polished, neutral, unthreatening. He learned how to blend in, how to silence the part of him that wanted to correct people when they made the small jokes, the ones they called harmless. He smiled through the unease. He learned that progress sometimes required patience that felt like surrender. But in silence, he built. Over the next 4 years, he climbed higher than anyone expected. He became known for efficiency, vision, and leadership, qualities that Malik always had, but that Michael was finally allowed to show. By 29, he was running half the analytics division. The same company that once ignored him now depended on him. His name was on internal reports, efficiency charts, board presentations. A ghost in their machine. But ghosts remember. Late one night, Malik stayed behind to run a system audit. The office was silent, the kind of quiet that hums with fluorescent light. He traced old access logs, checking permissions, until he found something strange, a folder hidden in the HR directory. It carried a name he hadn't seen there in years. His own. Inside were archived emails, old hiring discussions from when he'd first applied. And in those lines, he finally saw the truth in black and white. Not a culture fit. Too urban. Might intimidate clients. Recommend discard. The final approval came from his own superior. The same man who now praised Michael Dawson in board meetings. That was the night Malik stopped being patient. But revenge wasn't enough. He wanted something larger, something that would outlast anger. So he built a new kind of system. In secret, after hours, Malik began designing an algorithm that could change hiring forever. A model that ignored names, photos, gender, and background, leaving only skill, only talent, only truth. He called it Project Rebirth. It was the kind of innovation that could end the very bias that once buried him. And when he finally resigned from Meriton Technologies, he left quietly, without confrontation, without farewell, just silence and a plan. For years later, the world remembered his name. Rebirth Analytics, the headlines read. A new startup that promised to eliminate hiring bias through data anonymization. Its founder, Malik Washington, the same man once erased from the system, was now rewriting it. The same city that overlooked him now displayed his logo across billboards and conference halls. He had built success not from forgiveness, but from transformation. Even Meriton, the company that once denied him, came knocking. They wanted a partner. To buy his software. To use the very algorithm created by the man they discarded. And Malik let them. Because sometimes, justice doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives in silence, wearing a calm smile and a contract. He had everything now. Respect, power, purpose. But power, he soon learned, casts a longer shadow than rejection ever could. One evening, as city lights painted his office in gold and blue, a notification appeared on his encrypted screen. It wasn't from a client, or his team, or the press. It was from an anonymous sender. The message was simple. No subject, no greeting, just one chilling line. They're using your algorithm for something else. People are disappearing. If you're reading this, you're already being watched. The cursor blinked. The air in the room seemed to thicken. He leaned back slowly, heart pounding against the calm silence he had built around himself. Outside, in the reflection of the glass, he saw movement. A faint shadow crossing the hallway. It paused, then disappeared. The lights flickered once. Then again. Malik's creation, the system that was meant to fix the world, had somehow become part of something far darker. And deep down, he realized what the message truly meant. Justice wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. He had fought to build a world where names didn't matter. But in the end, his name was all they needed to find him. The message haunted him. The words glowed on his laptop screen like a quiet threat. They're using your algorithm for something else. Malik Washington sat still, the city lights flickering against the glass behind him. His office, once a symbol of triumph, suddenly felt smaller. The shadows on the walls seemed to lean closer, listening. For years, he had built Project Rebirth as a way to level the playing field, to give the overlooked a fair chance. Its design was meant to remove bias, to read skill, not skin. Yet now, the very thing he had created for justice was being whispered about like a weapon. He closed the laptop, but the message burned in his mind. People were disappearing, and somehow his code was connected. At first, he tried to dismiss it as paranoia. Anonymous messages weren't rare in tech: competitors, hackers, conspiracy theorists. But when his system administrator mentioned unexplained data breaches that week, access points outside the company's firewall, Malik's denial began to crumble. Rebirth Analytics had been built with layers of encryption. Only a handful of trusted developers had access, but someone else was inside, leaving faint traces, digital fingerprints hidden in the noise. Malik began tracing the breach himself. Each night, after the building emptied and the city fell silent, he sat in the dim glow of his monitor, sifting through code. He followed the intrusions through mirrored IPs and proxy chains, through countries and corporations that didn't exist. But one address kept resurfacing, an old server domain registered years ago. The name stopped him cold. Meriton Technologies. The same company that had once rejected him. The same place that had buried his resume with the words, "too urban." His pulse quickened. The corporation that once refused to hire him was now reaching into his servers, stealing from the technology he had created. And the deeper he dug, the more the truth began to unfold. Buried inside one of the external data transfers was a secondary network, an offshoot labeled Rebirth X. The files were heavily encrypted, but Malik recognized the architecture. It was his. His algorithm, restructured, modified. But where his version removed human bias, theirs had added it back in. The stolen code was being used to profile people, predict behavior, categorize potential employees, even flag individuals for risk assessment. The language in the metadata was corporate and clinical, but the implications were chilling. It wasn't just hiring. It was surveillance. The system he designed to free people was now being weaponized to control them. Malik scrolled through the logs, each new file revealing a deeper layer of deceit. Then he found something he couldn't explain: internal reports linking the system to private security firms and government contractors. Codenames, non-disclosure tags, payment trails routed through shell accounts. His company had been infiltrated, his invention stolen, and the world was quietly being sorted by his algorithm, judged, filtered, and erased. That night, he didn't sleep. The city outside glowed under rain, and the hum of streetlights echoed against the glass. Malik stared into the darkness, his reflection fractured against the window. He wondered how many people had already been marked. By morning, he made a decision. He wouldn't go to the press, not yet. He needed proof, undeniable evidence of who was behind it. To do that, he'd have to go back where it all started. Meriton Technologies. It had been years since he'd walked through those doors, but when he returned, the world didn't recognize the man he'd become. Security waved him through. The walls that had once excluded him now displayed his company's name on screens, showcasing a strategic partnership that he never approved. He moved through the corridors quietly, passing faces that looked familiar yet distant. Success had changed the building's air. It smelled sterile, expensive, and false. Inside the restricted data center, Malik found what he was looking for: a closed terminal running a live process labeled Project Sentinel. The interface was unmistakably his design. Only now, it didn't filter resumes. It tracked human movement, facial recognition, behavior mapping. Predictive analytics built from the same foundation he once wrote in his apartment years ago. Rebirth had been twisted into something monstrous. And at the center of the process log, listed under authorized oversight, was a name he recognized immediately. Gordon Reese, the company's chief operations director. The same man who once told him his vision was too idealistic for business. Malik copied everything he could. Screenshots, access logs, encrypted archives. The proof was enough to destroy reputations, maybe even governments. But as he reached for the external drive to leave, he noticed something strange on the monitor. A live video feed. It wasn't from a security camera. It was from his own office at Rebirth Analytics. His chair, his desk, his reflection in the glass the night before. Someone had been watching him. He froze. The timestamp on the footage was from only an hour earlier. They knew. The building's lights flickered. Somewhere down the corridor, a door opened. The echo of footsteps followed, measured, deliberate. Malik unplugged the drive and slipped it into his pocket. His heartbeat quickened, syncing with the hum of the server room. He moved quickly, avoiding cameras, following emergency stairwells to the parking level. The air was damp, metallic. A storm rolled in outside. When he reached his car, his phone vibrated. A single notification from an unknown number. You shouldn't have gone back there. He looked around the garage. Empty. Silent. Then, far in the corner, a black SUV idled with its headlights off. He drove off, heart pounding, the city's neon reflections streaking across the windshield. The rain blurred everything, but in the rearview mirror, the SUV followed, steady, distant, patient. Hours later, Malik reached his apartment. He locked every door, every window. The external drive sat on his table, still warm from his hand. He knew what was inside. It could end careers, maybe even lives. But it also held the truth, and the truth had to be seen. He powered up his laptop and began decrypting the files. Line by line, the data unfolded. Names, addresses, behavioral ratings, termination risk scores. Thousands of profiles. He froze. The timestamp and among them, his own. The screen displayed a classification label. Subject 0, prototype candidate. Original source. A chill spread through him. His own life, his decisions, his behavior, all mapped, monitored, predicted by the system he'd built. His algorithm hadn't just been stolen. It had been trained on him. The lights flickered again. The hum of his refrigerator stopped. The entire apartment fell into silence. Then, a faint sound, footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, certain, getting closer. He turned off the monitor and stepped back into the darkness. The drive was still decrypting, lines of code running silently across the black screen. Outside the window, lightning flashed, illuminating a single figure across the street, standing beneath a flickering street lamp. Motionless. Watching. Malik's breath steadied. Every instinct screamed to run. But something deeper whispered that the story wasn't over. That whoever they were, they wanted more than silence. They wanted him. And somewhere inside that stolen code was the reason why. Leave your comments in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel.